Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Premier League is back. It's Monday night, so we're back to talk about the Premier League and Liverpool's first game in the books. Lot to get to. I am your host, as always, Timuchin, here in a ridiculously stormy Chicago. So if there's a lot of rumblings and stuff in the background, it's not bodily functions, at least not this week. And if I go off of air suddenly, I would not be shocked, or a tornado warning or something like that. It's pretty rough out there. But with us, as always, from a calm or stormy, I don't know how you're doing over there. Bickler is with us. Bickler, what's up?
What's happening? It's just humid. It's so humid outside. The window panes are just shut with condensation. It's unbelievable. It's like living in a swamp. It's so good.
Sounds good. And Gally is with us as well. Gally, what is up?
We do nothing but bitch about weather on this podcast.
I know, right?
I love it. I swear to God, if literally people ever tuned into this thing, they're like, when do they talk about Liverpool? And why is it the three guys from America bitch so much about the weather when they cover a team that plays in Liverpool? Like, of all places, we bitch like we live in a place where it rains 90% of the time. Oh, wait, we do now. Global warming, some real shit.
This is what old dudes do, right? I mean, we talk about the weather, we cross our arms, we look out over the yard, we talk about just gazing off the back deck, talking about the weather in the yard. I don't know.
If we got a little bit more grill talk from Brian Shelton, we'd all be good.
There you go. Yeah, Brian's. And then what were we talking? We were talking about something with my brother the other day. Oh, yeah, it was something about gardening. I have no idea why. We never talk about that stuff. And I was like, dude, how old have we become? We're sharing gardening tips, if you do this kind of thing. But I noticed, by the way, that not only we all totally talk weather, we always bitch about the weather, like you said. It's never it's a beautiful evening over here.
It's never once has one of us come on and been 55 and cool tonight here in Western Massachusetts. I will say I'm most disappointed because the NBA enshrinement was this weekend, and that's usually the one night a year that I decide to go out late night and go to some of the downtown Springfield clubs and strip clubs, because you can meet the NBA players. But they shut down the big strip club in Springfield, and it's an absolute disgrace because I don't know where Gabrielle Union was hanging out in Springfield this Saturday night, but I would have liked to bump into her and probably see her in person, because I have a feeling she's even better looking in person than she is on TV.
Wow. Did you ever see this coming, Bickler, that Gally is a huge Gabrielle Union fan?
No, I'm trying to keep up. We went through Springfield Mass strip clubs. We went through a lot in the last 30 seconds.
I'm telling you right now, one of the great nights ever. I had a couple friends work down there, told me all about it, and they texted me and they were like, "You got to get down here. You got to get down here." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, the upstairs, the private bar?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know the private bar upstairs." He's like, "Allen Iverson is going fucking crazy. And it is like a show." I literally walked in, and it was literally like watching a movie. It was out of the out of the TV show Ballers, but it was real, and it was Allen Iverson, and he was every bit as entertaining as you could imagine he would be in a private room at a strip club.
I can imagine Gally going through pushing the strippers out of the way. Excuse me. Has anybody seen Gabrielle over here?
Oh yeah.
Wait to the back. Oh,
Gally, you were there just sneaking a $20 bill at a time off the floor.
This show can only go downhill from here, if it hasn't already. So why don't we just really bump up the mood a bit more with trivia? That's right.
Right into the gutter.
Favorite segments. So this week's trivia, we're kind of back to the season over here, and I still don't have my assistant sending me good questions. So we're going with this one. We're playing Bournemouth. Last time we played Bournemouth was 9-0 at home, I should say.
Oh, I was going to say we lost in their building.
So the question this week is, I don't know if you guys remember that game, with the current squad players, how many of those goals would we still have scored? Any qualifying questions, Bickler?
No.
Okay, so what is your answer?
8. I don't know. No, 7.
7 out of the 9 goals you're saying
Sure.
we would have scored with the current squad players.
Galley's going to actually try to go down the goals. Ridiculous.
Yeah, but
Deli is like, okay, that was the 32nd minute. And
Why hurt you? Why hurt yourself? I mean,
I think it's less actually. What'd you say? You said 8?
as it said, well, yeah,
it
Seven?
went down to 7 afterwards.
I'm gonna say it's like. I think Alex had one. Is it like?
He's freaking counted the goals, dude.
No, I think it's like. I think it's like.
told you.
I think it's like 6, and I could be even high there. It might have been 5, but I'll go with 6.
It is actually 5. Would you
See? Should have went with my 5.
2
Bastard.
by Diaz, 1 by Harvey, 1 by Trent. Bobby had 2 goals there. Van Dijk had 1. There was an own goal, and there was a goal by Carvalho. So it was 5. I'm not giving partial credit on this one. I thought you guys would have nailed this. No, not really, but I thought it was kind of like weird that because Bobby had 2, and obviously the own goal was like the cure goal in there. But get that trivia out of the way with no correct answers as always. So I was going to talk about the game. Normally, like we jump into the game, but I kind of felt like the moment every time we talk about the game, we're gonna kind of go back to the fact that this is all due to midfield or this is all due to this guy and stuff. So let's get that stuff out of the way in terms of our midfield and defensive midfield woes, because I kind of figured as we analyze the game, we're going to keep repeating ourselves and saying, like, if we had a CDM there, if Mac was here and stuff like that. So the whole ordeal with the Caicedo is done. Lavia deal, I don't think it's official yet, right? Almost done, sounding like, but not official because everybody wants to go to Chelsea. Obviously, everybody wants the money. Let's put it that way. Or as Bickler is researching people's childhood photos, some of them have been Chelsea fans for like a limited amount of time. Bickler, where do we go from here? Obviously, we've dug ourselves a hole. Because as I mentioned this morning, doing my best Bickler impression and being like very pessimistic, I just have a bad feeling that we're going to try it out. For example, Thiago out there this week against Bournemouth. We're going to smash him, and it's going to be like, oh, well, Bacetic is back too. Maybe we'll be fine. And then we're going to find out against Newcastle that we are not fine, and it's going to be a last-minute Arthur loan type of deal that's going to come out our way. That's my horror scenario. I know you're into horror. What is your scenario?
I really don't know. I mean, that tracks, right? I mean, that sounds exactly like something we do. I think the problem is this market is so inflated for the players that you can plug and play that like I don't think there's the argument that you can make that beggars can't be choosers, right? So that you just overpay regardless because you have a need, right? But like, does anybody feel good if we go pay close to 50 million for Decore out of Crystal Palace? Like the drop off is so significant. I just don't know where you go. And then all your other options that we're seriously looking at are players that are coming, like are at Fluminense in Brazil, and you just never know how that adjustment goes for those guys. Like, I don't know, man. I think this is why the Caicedo Lavia thing is such a blow. And I got to be honest with you, like the Lavia thing for me is like, if I don't believe that we were ever sold on that player. Like it doesn't ever feel like to me that we really believed, like no matter what we would have spent on Lavia to bring him in, I don't know. Like I feel pretty strongly that he wouldn't have been plugged into the starting 11 right away. And he wouldn't have it's not like you would have seamlessly picked him in and not had a drop off. I believe there would have been a significant drop in talent there if you would have plugged him in. So it doesn't really kill me that transfer didn't come through. The problem is that like Caicedo was the perfect transfer in terms of what we needed and what could have happened and a dude that could have like anchored your midfield for the next 10 years. And that's probably why that hurts so much. The other options that are out there are guys that are like 28 years old that I don't think are value for what you end up paying for. I don't know. They're interesting players. Like I think Kamara at Aston Villa is a player I'd take a look at. I don't know if you could get him, but it makes sense. His age is there, and I think he's probably decent value. But I don't know. And that's the problem is I just think I think that what scares me is I think 3 or 4 years ago, like our analytics department would have come up with answers that we don't have now.
I feel like that too. I mean, and that's, I said this whole summer when this dude came, I thought he would have some names with him and saying like this kid in Bundesliga that plays for Köln or something like that. But my thing with Caicedo was I thought it was the ideal scenario. And not only that, he is, a finished product and he's ready to go. He's proven. I kind of like the fact of the transition period, having played next to McAllister before, having that, duo play for your midfield would go a lot more seamlessly. So I'm over bummed with that one. I'll be honest, I am not as bummed with the Lavia deal, because my thing with that, Gally, is we clearly felt that, shit, this guy is not worth this much. If we're going to spend that much, we might as well go spend even more and get the top player. So it felt like if we went back to Lavia and paid the 60, which I guess is still a possibility, but I feel like it goes kind of like similar to what Bickler is saying. We're getting somebody that we were not even sold on ourselves in terms of value and price.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, listen, we talk about comparing ourselves to City, right? City knows that they have a wasted player in Phillips. They know they need cover in their midfield. They know that they were down two midfielders before Riyad Mahrez left and Gundogan was leaving, right? They had an opportunity to buy this player back for less than 30 million and didn't see a prudent option to make that purchase this summer. Like, as soon as City passed up the chance to buy Lavia this summer, it was the easiest thing for them, right? They could have just picked him. They know the kid, but they kind of know who he is and what his ceiling is. And for me, like, we always try to benchmark ourselves. Do I think Lavia is a good player that has big upside for the long term? I think he does. I don't know he's worth 50 million. I also don't know that Southampton was ever going to sell him for 50 million. We keep hearing this price. We keep hearing that he agreed to terms with us. If this whole Caicedo situation didn't teach us anything, is that if the agent, the player, or the club doesn't say it nowadays, you can't believe it because you read it on Twitter. And these guys are just posting things that are just absolute. They're farcical. And forget about Romano getting taken down by other journos. I mean, there was journo on journo crime, which normally doesn't happen. Calling each other out by name. Yeah, because the reporting was so poor. But I don't think that we can then say, like, that's only in a vacuum, right? And that wasn't happening in the Lavia deal. Chelsea supposedly offered 53 million and they rejected the deal. So everyone who got mad about us not upping the bid to 50 million, get the deal done. We sat on our hands. We did the right thing. We played the long game and we jumped in 2 feet when we thought we could take a march and steal a player of utmost talent. And the kid changed his mind overnight. That shit happens in sports. So, like, to me, I'm not as broken up about the Lavia deal as much as I am that I don't know that there is a like-ready replacement. Because for a day and a half, I had myself convinced we were getting what I believe is the second or third best number 6 in England in Caicedo coming to our club. And to your point, playing alongside McAllister. And to me, it's going to be a huge drop-off no matter who comes in. And we're also going to overpay, which is going to put even more pressure on that player. And that's never a good recipe for a Liverpool transfer because Klopp doesn't love to bed guys in right away. And I just feel like this is just us. We are paying the price this summer for 2 consecutive summers of bad business, all because the Saudi League popped up. And we weren't ready for it.
I mean, Brian says dropping that bid, we showed our hand. Clubs are going to want over top money. I think knowing the need. I mean, the moment I think Hendo and Fab left, everybody in the world knew that we were going to need somebody over there. So the prices are going to get elevated automatically. Having said that, Bickler, at the same time, we know this. And kind of like what Gally says, we do not want to overpay. And we refuse to overpay. Obviously, if we wanted to overpay somebody, we would have probably done it with Lavia. We only pay what our evaluation is, right? So does this mean that we're probably not going to – this is what goes back to my horror scenario. Right. That's why I'm thinking we do not go in for anybody and say, you know what, then that's fine. We'll see what we can do. And they're gonna ask Klopp. They're like, I like my boys, and then they're just gonna have to try to roll with what we got.
Yeah, if I'm a selling club, I'd much rather. I'm going to be of the mindset that Liverpool's going to walk away from this player 9 times out of 10. Like, before they overpay for sure.
Yeah.
We've shown instances where we'll go out and we'll pay money for the player, but it's a very unique situation. It's Allison, it's Van Dijk, it's like players that are it's Casado. It's players in their prime that are like going to be pieces that are locked in for 5 to 10 years, and we know it. When you look at this market and you look at the situation we're in, it looks tailor-made for us to just like, okay, so here's my fear. When you talk about fear, my fear is that like what we saw in this match, we're going to see a lot more of. And what I mean by that is we're going to see a lot of Gakpo in the midfield. That's what I strongly believe.
Well, he was the worst player on the pitch, in my opinion, and he made the second worst player, Robertson, look even worse.
See, I disagree. I think he was better than Szoboszlai. I think that he was the second best midfielder out there.
His defensive work was terrible. He left Robo one. He would constantly go forward. I thought Szoboszlai was also off, to be honest. And our best midfielder is playing in the worst position for him. And
I saw him breaking up a lot of plays. I saw him making really good fouls when we were in trouble, like especially when we were getting countered. Like I saw a lot of things that I don't like. Like that's the problem is he's so important for us in the middle up front. But I think what you saw with that lineup was that Klopp was going to prioritize the press, and Jota and Gakpo are going to be in the same lineup when we do that. And so like. I don't know. Like I look at what's available this summer, and I'm with you, Tim. My fear is that we're just going to play players out of their best natural positions to make up for it.
Honestly, if you listen to Klopp in the post-match press conference, he almost like hinted that this is what we're planning for Gakpo moving forward. Either because we have depth in the front line and not in the midfield. So
forget about the number on the back of the shirt.
Yeah, we're taking that out of there and putting him in there. But I do agree. I felt. If you just watch the game and I told you, hey, one of these guys is a forward playing a midfielder, I think I would have said Szoboszlai. The way he played more than Gakpo. I think Gakpo adjusted that midfield more than Szoboszlai does. The only issue that I see with that midfield, the way it is literally everybody is playing out of position. I think at least if you have a defensive midfielder who knows defensive midfield and Mac is normal, I think you can get away with Szoboszlai or Gakpo being that third person slightly out, almost like having Elliott over there or something like that. Somebody that's not really designed for that, but is doing the job. I just felt like both of them have the same issues, but I feel like Gakpo is a lot better with. If Gakpo goes into a tackle, kind of like what Bickler was saying, he's going to win the ball or he's going to do the foul. I feel like Szoboszlai plays like a forward playing midfield. So when he goes in the ball, like he's more like going into for the opportunity. He's a pressing machine as well. I can see why we valued him where he's at. And I have faith that he will adjust to that role. But for the time being, I think, or does it show up a lot more, you think, Gally, because everybody over there is out of position, not only him?
Well, I really believe that's what it comes down to. But I'm sorry, guys. I watched that match, saw it with people. I've read the reviews of people, and I listened to Klopp talk about him too. If he was so good, why was he the one yanked off first? He got taken off before Szoboszlai and McAllister. Gakpo was the one subbed off the pitch, and Jones came on, and then Elliott came on after. So I understand what you're saying. I thought it was
that Mo got taken out too,
and I think there was a ludicrous substitution at the time when he did it. But we're going to get to that. We're not talking about what. Listen, I think the manager had a mare yesterday. I think he was awful. I think they made no tactical adjustments at halftime, and I think Pochettino took his pants down, to be honest. We should have went up 2-0, whether Mo's offside or not. That whole entire match fell apart after the half. So we always talk about Klopp and the adjustments and what he does and how he motivates the players. We got beat, in my opinion. We drew that match because of the second half performance. What was it, 60-40 second half possession to Chelsea? They were bossing us, and they came into the match set up to play on the counterattack. It didn't make sense to me, honestly. And I thought Gakpo was good at times. I thought he looked lost going backwards. We all talk about how good he is pressing, but he makes the front go. And for me, I kind of felt like he left Robertson out to dry on the 2-on-1. There were 2-on-1s all day long with James and Sterling running at Robertson. Whether or not that was partially McAllister not doing his job in the 6, or it wasn't Gakpo tracking back in the right way on the runs, he was left out alone all match long, and we were criticizing him all the first half. I feel like when you watch it back, and I did watch it back a little bit today, I saw a lot of times where he looked like a guy who is caught in between two minds, going forward and being a false 9 / guy who drops back and being a guy who's playing in the 8. And to me, it's hard done on Curtis Jones. Like, the kid ended last season great, had a great summer, all in all played really well in the few preseason matches he played, and he's sitting behind a 4th attacker, and then when he comes on, he actually adds to the match. I thought Szoboszlai should have got taken off. He would have been the first one subbed off for me, and he was the last one out on the pitch.
First one, not Gakpo?
Yeah,
no,
you just totally contradicted everything now.
No, I didn't. I actually said I would have taken off Szoboszlai first. I don't think Gakpo
better than Gakpo.
No, I actually didn't say that Szoboszlai was better than Gakpo. I thought that Gakpo was rough. You guys feel like Gakpo played great. I thought he had a rough match playing out of position because he's not a number 8, in my opinion. You guys might think he's a number 8. I don't think he's a number 8. I think he might be a 10, and we've made him a false 9.
Well, maybe we're arguing about the different conversation then, because initially when we said we felt Gakpo played better in midfield, he was the second best midfielder. I got the impression you thought Szoboszlai was better. Well, and that's why he stayed the entire pitch, and at the end, you kind of like totally changed that. That's why it confused me.
No, I'm saying that I felt Klopp felt he was better because he left him out on the pitch longer. I think McAllister was the best midfielder on the pitch, playing out of position, still creating more passes, doing a bigger job on the pitch. I actually thought, for me, that didn't look like the Gakpo we saw last year, making an actual impact on us, because I think he impacts us going forward more than any player out there right now. And we talked all summer long about how important he was playing through the center.
I think he was a crossbar away from a beautiful assist by holding off 2 players in the break. I thought
that's a good point.
I thought he did a lot.
I felt like out of the 2, I think the problem is you're playing 2 of the same guys in that spot with Szoboszlai as well, and that's like the issue.
Why I wanted Szoboszlai on the bench all summer long, saying I would start Jones in this match, because I thought putting a $70 million signing out there on the road at Stamford Bridge with a makeshift midfield actually put that player in a position to not succeed. And I genuinely don't think Klopp had his best day yesterday. That's my biggest thing. My biggest takeaway yesterday is Jurgen Klopp still doesn't know how to manage this roster right now. And maybe that's because he lost guys he didn't have. Maybe he didn't get the signings he needed. But we spent a whole offseason saying how we had to have a revolution and a change. Looked a hell of a lot like the beginning of last year when we had a disconnected midfield to Paul's point.
Yeah, but
that's all I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, but that's kind of like unfair to, I think, say that, because you answered the offseason, you answered camp with a totally different plan than what we're trying to come up with right now. I mean, it is definitely a manager.
They've been gone for a month. But they've been gone for a month. He's been saying, I need a plan for Chelsea, and then we'll worry about the rest of the season once guys come in. If that was the plan for Chelsea, in my opinion, it was a bad plan.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know. I know I'm the most critical on Curtis Jones here, Bickler, but I did not see when Curtis Jones came in. I did not see myself saying, "Well, this is why Curtis Jones should play." I actually found myself saying, "This is why Curtis Jones is not playing right now in this lineup, in this format." Because he does not bring the press, I feel like Gakpo does, for example, and he was doing wrong things in the wrong places on the pitch.
Well, look at the players that started versus the players that came off the bench, right? I think both Jones and Darwin are liabilities when you're relying on a press, and I think that's the bottom line. So I think we set out the press. I think the other thing that really stood out to me is that if you're going to play Trent as an inverted fullback, like, it doesn't solve the problem, because now you're asking Robbo to be a third center back. And that doesn't work, especially when teams are going to continue to overload that channel. Like it doesn't work. And so I think what we saw just in a nutshell is like that's not the answer. Like essentially we're gonna have to, and that's why I said, if like we go out, like we talk about what does the CDM market look like? Where do we go from here? Like I think we go with the left-footed center back. To me, I'm
with
happier.
you.
I'm happier with Ignacio than anything else on the market in CDM right now, because I think like the thing that stood out to me, God, I hate to say this feels so wrong. Virgil van Dijk looks like a fucking statue. He reminds me of
Tim thought he was good yesterday.
I actually thought he did well yesterday.
I know.
I didn't think so, and I thought he looks like the last days of Instant Company. Like when the legs had gone.
Really? I honestly thought he did well. He looks a lot better than he did last year for sure to me. And
maybe I'm not giving him a fair run. Maybe I'm not giving him a fair run. I mean, he completely lost his man on the goal. Like I just feel like he was slow to react in general. Like it just seems like he's like I don't even think it's a step slower. Like if I'm honest. And
I felt he did well, especially with how poorly Robertson was playing. And I know what you're saying, Gally, in terms of being outnumbered there, but one-on-one, I mean, he got beaten over and over and over again on the left-hand side.
Worst player on the pitch. I want to make sure that's clear. Like Robertson was the worst player on the pitch. I wasn't trying to make excuses for him.
What did you think about Van Dijk?
I thought he was better than what we saw towards the tail end of last season. Yeah. But I was hoping there'd be a little bit more pep in his step, a little more confidence in him. He still looks really arrogant and really smug. And I know he's always going to look that way because that's just his demeanor. But I do feel at some point you have to drop that demeanor if you are if literally Nick Jackson is running you up and down the channels and taking you out of your spaces. Like, I have as big a problem as how a makeshift front three that really doesn't work well together, and Nicholas Jackson, Sterling, and was it Mudryk? Was that the other starter, or who was the other one out on the wing?
But he got subbed in. It was
he came in. I forget who started out on the left. Was it Maduk or whatever it is? Like, they were actually moving our defense around as if they were the old Liverpool front three, like using movement and runs to shift people around. And, Gallagher running through the midfield, Enzo Fernandez literally bossing the midfield. Like, it was a pretty poor performance all in all. And I know people are like, oh, it's a good point. You get a point at Stamford Bridge. We really should have went into that game with the turmoil that club has. Brand new manager. We should have went into that game and had a real shot to take 3 points at Stamford Bridge. And it does feel like 2 points dropped. It really does. And we easily could have lost the match, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, I kept saying it all week. I thought it was the best time to play, and I think we saw why. I think that team is going to get better and better and better. Obviously, they added some pieces too. I mean, Enzo, that's probably the best I've seen him play. That's probably the first time I've seen him justify the price tag.
I'd agree.
Is that because of our midfield and everybody's out of place? I don't know. I guess we'll find that out in the moving weeks. Because that was the thing I was thinking. I was like, how this guy is so good today? Because I had not been as impressed. I don't know if it's because he's going against a midfield that's kind of like lost and confused. And I think with the Trents playing, I think the issue yesterday was obviously Robertson was poor. Second half got a bit better. But the first half, I was like, oh my God, is there anybody on that side? Because even when he was on that side, he was getting beat all the time. And I don't think we got anything positive out of Trents in an attacking sense. And that's when you're like, that's the positive we're going to get out of you. You're not here for your defensive work. You're here for that at least. And I felt like we did not get that. So is it because Bickler, one thing that they kept doing, obviously, was going to the right, going to Robertson's side. Whereas we're normally used to people attacking Trent's side, thinking that's the weaker side of our defense. Is that because just to surprise us in terms of strategy, or just because they have Reese over there, so they're going to go to Reese? And that diagonal ball, they know that if that ball is long and Chilwell is going to be over there, most likely Trent will not be. So it came across as a lot better strategy than attacking directly with Chilwell.
I mean, I think the frustrating thing is it's just what people have done to us for the last year and a half. I don't think it was groundbreaking in any respect. They just overloaded the right channel. And just banked on the fact that Trent would be too far up or that Konate would get sucked over, and both happened a lot. I thought Trent actually did better defensively than he did going forward.
Yeah.
That's the problem, right? I thought he actually did fairly good coming back. So I don't know, man. And that's the frustrating thing. It's another year, the exact same tactic, and we're making changes, but we're not figuring out, how to close that channel down. And I actually thought Robbo looked really good the last 20 minutes of the game when we went to a back four. He made a couple of interceptions and broke down the left channel and created some attacking stuff.
Do you think that's why that was, or because Reese was not there? That's what I could not decide on myself.
Probably both, but I mean, let's face it, Reese doesn't have a whole lot of interest in defending. So I think, to me, when he's in the back four, he looks more comfortable at like reading the play in front of him. Like the good things that happened came from the fact because he was cutting out passes into the half spaces. He was reading them. And then we were breaking off of those interceptions. But I feel like when we're in a back three, he doesn't have, he can't really do that. He's not in that same space to do that. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I just think it's frustrating to see us make tactical changes that don't really make a difference. And to be quite honest, there are huge stretches of that match. After 30 minutes into the match, there are huge stretches where we didn't break 25% possession. And let's face it, we're not a team. We're not a team that can win games if we don't have the ball.
Not anymore.
And I think that was another thing. We just could not control possession at all. And I think they did the smart thing by loading up that midfield, where obviously was our weakness, and you have attacking guys playing midfield. You have that press, but they were able to break through that press at times. And once they break through, then, it's a shit show in the bag. I mean, basically, you're outnumbered. I mean, this was the fear all along, right? Going back to what you were saying, Gally. This should have been 3 points. This is the best time to play them. And I just felt like today, I mean, we were talking about in the morning show with Mateusz. I felt like even if you had Henderson this weekend as a playing six, slightly out of position, and you could shift McAllister to where you should be, keep Szoboszlai, push Gakpo to where Jota is, put everybody where they should be, this would have been a win. And I think this process dragging, and this was my concern the last 2-3 weeks, I kept saying, while there are people saying well, there's 2 more weeks in the window, is these points that we lose now, I just have a bad feeling come April, May, when we're 4 short, 6 points short, we're going to be like, man, those points we lost in the first few weeks is going to come back and haunt us.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that this was a year we had to get our business done early. Klopp wanted it done early. Everybody knows the stories, right? To Paul's point earlier, the market is insane. These prices are just ridiculous. I mean, a 22-year-old kid with 25 appearances made United pay $80 million for him as a striker with 25 senior goals. I mean, the Højlund kid, it's crazy. I mean, but then look at last year. Anthony got $85 million from Ajax. The kid's a $40 million player, tops. Has no business wearing a United jersey, and he wouldn't have been starting today. Let's be honest. Alanga is a better winger right now in the Premier League. Showed it in 5.5 minutes for Nottingham Forest and draw his team level and almost won it for him. Got them back into the match with Arsenal by basically being the best direct player on the pitch. Everything Anthony's supposed to be, right? But he was just like a Brazilian player out of the Dutch league, so he got a ton of money. The transfer prices that people are paying now are just insane. And we know we don't do that business. So where I'm frustrated, I'm also I don't know who they were going to buy. Because if Lavia is overpriced, we tried our best foot forward to get Caicedo, the best number 6 to move this summer. And all accounts, we were geniuses. We laid in the weeds. We waited till the last moment. We pounced like a tiger would, right, on its prey. And we thought that son of a bitch was going to roll over, give us our belly, and we were going to eat. And then he literally woke up a porcupine, and we were like, fuck, we're done. It all fell apart. I mean, I don't know where we could have went to Much, and that's my one thing. Like, I love to blame the club, and I've been very critical of FSG over the last couple of years after defending them for years. But, like, I don't know where they could have pounced early. I don't think there was a deal to be had because you couldn't get Lavia at the price we were going to pay. We tried to get Tuchimeni out. We've tried for 2 years. The kid hates us. He hates everything about, like, Liverpool and the city. I'm going to say it right now. The dude hates England. Yeah. Like, and we also don't, Brian Shelton just drops a good point there. $250K a week for 9 years is $117 million paid to the player. You can't make that up if you're offering 120. And to Paul's point earlier from one of our earlier pods, it would have been criminal, in my opinion, to give Bellingham $250,000 a week at his age with his experience. It's even worse to do it for Caicedo because Caicedo has proven less and is a little older. So, like, none of these deals are prudent or financially smart. And maybe Chelsea will fall apart by doing this. But, like, I don't know what we could have done. And I think now we're going to have to cobble it together by basically going out and getting a couple bargain basement buys. And I know Kazi was throwing out today, like, Wilfred Ndidi and guys like that as a stopgap for 1 year. And I'm not saying I want to go that route, but I do think we have to look in the smaller market, finding guys a more of a short-term fix, even if it's overspending on Douglas Luiz and giving them a 2-year deal instead of a 4 or 5 year deal. So you can get out from under it if it doesn't work. But they have to buy players who know how to play in the 6. And they have to buy guys ready to play in the Premier League right now, which means we're in trouble.
See, I think we were earlier in the transfer market. We were talking about these players like Kone, Thuram, and stuff like that. I feel like you get one of those guys in because when the camp started, we were saying we still need one more midfielder for that, another center back. Those were like the luxury, good old days when we were talking about it. And then we suddenly lost Fab and Hendo. I feel like if you got one of those guys and then where you felt, they have to adjust and stuff like that, they would have had a month to adjust by now. I honestly don't even think, and I don't know what you think about this one, for example, Big. I don't even think this Caicedo thing was in the plans until like 3 days ago when Lavia Price got
I don't agree with that.
I disagree.
We've him since he was in South America. We made contact with both him and Brighton last summer. We talked again to them in January. A lot of people think
make the offer earlier in the transfer market and get the guy
because then you're in a bidding war with Chelsea early.
Right. We waited till Chelsea did
battle anyway at the end. Why not get in there early?
Right. But we were operating under the assumption that Brighton was holding an auction with a deadline of midnight, and that we could come in and snipe that deal, and Brighton would hold their end of the deal up, and we would get the player. Now we know, in my opinion,
because we got into it, didn't they? But, I mean, it's not like that deadline was there. Like, obviously they were getting sick of it and the season is starting, but it felt like when we entered the battle in the bidding war, they were like, okay, well, there's a deadline for this. We're not going to keep going on and on for this. And we outbid on paper, but obviously it goes back to the money.
I think supposedly there was a deadline set by Brighton to get the deal done before the Premier League season started with midnight on Friday night. Chelsea could not come up with the bid to meet their valuation. We sniffed that out and jumped in and said, we'll do 111. And the reason we did 111 is at that moment, financial fair play would only allow Chelsea to bid up to 110. We genuinely pipped them like with the plus and a 40 million and a quid for Suarez type bullshit from Arsene Wenger. Like, we tried to call Chelsea's bluff, and we thought the player was going to agree. And once Brighton said it's okay, it was brilliant. And for 8 hours, we all went to bed glowing, and we ran 2 podcasts on Thursday night to, we had graphics with his jersey.
Your guys jinxing it, by the way. But
I wouldn't blame us, seeing that it was being reported as completed. But he didn't want to move, and he changed his mind the next day. But I actually think we were in there the whole time. Hogan was quietly talking to Brighton, saying, hey, we're just going to sit here in the grass. You just let us know as it gets close to the end. And if we still want in, we'll get in. And maybe if we could have gotten Lavia for 44 or 38 or our price, we would have walked away from Caicedo because let's be honest, we didn't want to spend 110 million.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think that was in the original plan. Like, if you were able to lock in Lavia at a price that we felt was good value, I don't think we're suddenly coming in. I felt like Lavia price got so high that we're like, shit, if we're going to pay 60 for him, might as well pay 111 for this guy.
But to Paul's point, though, I think we had to be in all along and talking to him, or it wouldn't have gotten that fast to that point. And when we dropped that bid, we already had the negotiations. We had the terms. Do you realize we were offering them a 25% sell-on clause? Like, if we were to sell that player, we were going to give them another 25% off. So we're going to pay 110 and 25% of our value of the player. We clearly wanted the player, and that negotiation was going on for a period of time. Listen. We thought we were literally going to bait the person in Texas Hold'em with like a full house and make them bet with their flush. And we thought we were going to literally roll over like pocket threes and they were going to be like, shit. Seriously, like damn it. We thought we did it again, right? Because that's what we do. And we've talked about this before. Sometimes when you're the smartest person in the room, people call you out on it. Sometimes when you're the best poker player, people call your bluff purely because you've bluffed them a few times in the past. And I feel like in this case, Chelsea figured out a way to get their player, and then they turned around and literally went in for Lavia, trying to get us to drop our bid. And when we didn't, they were like, screw you, we're going to sign him anyways. And it's crazy because
FFP thing a huge joke, and I don't even know. I can't understand the math behind that. Because I heard about the 111 thing that you're referencing. So if that's the case, how did they pay this and that if they couldn't?
I know.
That? I just don't understand that part. But that almost, if that's the case, because I still don't believe we were in this until Lavia price got out of whack. But that almost, if we were waiting for this all along, Bickler, I feel like it makes it look even worse. Because you had no plan B to fall back on because you did not invest in one of the cheaper options earlier, even if it's just as a plan B to sit there in your squad as a defensive mid. And now all the prices are elevated because freaking everybody in the world knows that we need a CDM.
I think it just goes back to the market. I mean, I think we looked at the market, didn't love anything we saw. The two players that we liked, the Lavia thing we liked at a certain price but didn't like at another, which I can't blame the club for. And I think the frustrating thing is I think we got played by both sides. I think we got played by both Chelsea and we got played by Brighton. And I'm actually most disappointed in Brighton because I think it means something in the transfer business when you give another club your word on something and you actually hold a firm deadline on something and say, this is what we're going to do, and you don't do it. Like, I expect that from another club who's like bidding for a player. I don't expect that from a selling club, especially a club like Brighton, and that's pretty disappointing.
But would you want, we were talking about this in the morning show. I mean, what is Brighton's option? Can they tell? They can't really tell the guy, no, you're going here. We already set a deadline. And how will that look to other players?
Sure they can.
For Brighton now, saying this is what Brighton does, I won't have a say afterwards.
I think for a club like Brighton that buys players on the cheap and does it well and sells them for a profit, you have to be careful at how you're viewed as a selling club and how you stop players from going to the club they want to, or those young players. The next Isisco won't be coming to your club, right? The next Sarmiento won't be coming to your club. That being said, Brighton leaves with a little egg on their face. I think the issue here is Brighton and De Zerbi, more importantly, made it very clear to Brighton he wanted no part of Caicedo as any part near his squad, which is why he's been injured with a hamstring injury all preseason and never even trained with the first team. Because De Zerbi, people forget how ruthless De Zerbi was to Trossard a week and a half after showing up, right? And like Trossard was like, well, I want out in January. And he was like, all right, well, you can just go train with the reserves right now. We don't need you. Yeah. Next thing you know, Matoma was the best left wing in the Premier League and literally took his job overnight. And I think De Zerbi is one of those guys. He is, you are with me or you are against me. And if you are against me, go. And I think Brighton didn't have anything to fall back on. because Brighton had already made it clear Caicedo was no part of their plans. And they weren't going to let that player toil in their reserves the way PSG threatened to do it to Mbappe, because they were going to lose a lot of money. Every minute he didn't play, they lost money. And let's be honest, Brighton just got the all-time record signing in the history of the English Premier League. And we all know Brighton's going to turn that into 10 more players that they'll probably sell for close to $500 million over the next 5 years, because they're that good with their recruitment. So to them, 100 million, 115, they couldn't chance this not happening, because he might go for 60 or 40 or whatever later on down the road if something happens or he ends up injured. I'm angry with their tactics, but I understand from a business standpoint, because they're not Liverpool supporters. And honestly, it is shame on us, because we couldn't convince the player to join our project even after willing to spend 111 million on him. And maybe that's down to the wages we were willing to pay him.
I honestly think, that's part of the wages is probably a big part of the deal, but I think the dude I almost feel like we got used by his agents, and probably maybe with the knowledge of Caicedo, to speed up the Chelsea process and make Chelsea commit, was more than anything else.
Yep.
And that's why, I know what you're saying, Bickler, in terms of, setting a deadline. I was more putting myself in Brighton's situation, that you have other players in that squad looking at the situation, and they're going to be like, wait, so you're going to stop me because they missed the deadline by an hour? It just kind of like sets a bad precedent. But yeah, I feel like we got used.
They didn't miss it by an hour. They had 4 months to make the deal, and they missed it by like multiple days.
They were not going to twist their own player's arm to
Correct.
go somewhere because they made the deal with the club, which, like I say, I understand. I just feel like we got used by the agent ultimately to speed up the process. And I honestly don't even think like there was Liverpool interest at all. All along, it was like, oh, yeah, why wouldn't he be interested? So that we entered the thing to speed up Chelsea, and which it worked, right? Chelsea suddenly was like fucking in panic. Otherwise, they would have probably dragged it even more. But all that said and done, and the chaos ensues, what are we looking at next weekends? So early prediction, obviously, we're going to have the Thursday pod and everything. And throughout the week, we're going to have more shows to do more previews about it. But as of now, what do you see for the lineup? Regardless of who we sign or who we don't sign, Bickler, they're not going to be in the lineup. So what do you expect to see next Saturday? Is my horror story going to come true?
I think it's going to be the exact same lineup you saw versus Chelsea.
Yeah, me too.
And that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's not a good thing. For
that game specifically, not in the grand scheme of things, but for that game specifically.
For that game specifically, I just think it's just more of the same. You're playing your best players out of position, I think, and that seems to be what Jurgen Klopp does when he doesn't have an answer. And I think
Jones not playing. I'm sorry, Bickler, didn't mean to cut you off. But do you think Jones not playing, Bickler, was due to this is the plan we had for Chelsea? We wanted to press, or he doesn't have the 90 minutes yet, or that experiment did not work as well as Klopp wanted to?
I think Jurgen Klopp is enamored with Gakpo. And I think that he'll put Gakpo in the lineup regardless of where he has to play him.
That's fair, but then you could put it where Jota was, who I thought...
because I think Jota was the best player in the preseason as a whole amongst the front five. As far as form and actual fitness went, and let's be honest, we need people to put the ball in the net, and Jota pops up in spots and puts the ball in the net. Now, I've always said he's also the player who comes off the bench and within 2 minutes can score a goal, more than Darwin, more than Gakpo, in my opinion. So, for me, I'd have Darwin and Jota on the bench, as painful as that is for the Jota lovers, because I think Gakpo brings the most through the middle. And I think you saw from Diaz what he offers. I also think Diaz lived off of one great run and a great finish on a really good ball through the middle. I don't think Diaz was all that great all match long. He did a little bit. He did, but he disappeared. He went quiet for a while. So, I could argue you could play Jota on the left and Gakpo through the middle if you need Jota on the pitch to score you a goal. I personally think
like he was one of the rare outlets moving forwards, especially when we were trying to clear and get some, especially in the first half.
But
He disappeared in the second half.
It felt like it was like 25 to 30 minutes of the first half. To be honest, from the time they leveled at 22 minutes, they dominated the match from that moment forward. And let's be clear, I think Mo was onside, and the second goal should have counted. The third guy up looked like his shoulder was playing him on. The lines looked like it was his arm. I thought we were getting away from the millimeter lines, and if it was close, you were on. But at the same time, Chilwell wasn't that far off being offside to taking the lead in the first half either on the goal that they had chalked
They
off.
were both. I was hoping the guy's foot on the top of the screen.
That's what I thought. The third guy up.
I don't. When you look at the grass, unless the dude didn't cut it straight, it looked like the moment I saw it, because we were holding up on the snacks. There was a lot of excitement waiting for the snacks, and I was like, "Hold on, VAR." And it didn't go through because I had a bad feeling that was not going to. Before we go, let's hit on two players real quick. Mo coming off as a sub. Non-story Bigler. I mean, Mo never comes off happy out of a game.
It's a story. It's a story because it's a bad substitution at that point in the game. That's why it's a story.
It's a shocking one because I know in the pre-match, John mentioned Bandok making an appearance, and we shunned him, saying, "Dude, Mo's never coming out if he needs to score a goal on this."
Well, so here's the thing, though: is Mo's going to have to get used to that at his age right now. Like he's going to have to be protected from himself a little bit. But when you're 1-1 in the season opener versus Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, that's not that moment.
Yeah, I agree with Paul there 100%. And I was the one who last week was the one person who took the over on the 7 Premier League appearances, feeling good about it after he gets one in the 70th minute of week 1. No, I mean, because honestly, it shows that Jurgen Klopp falls for players, right? He didn't fall for Carvalho. He fell for Harvey Elliott a couple years ago. He starts starting over the club captain for the first 2 out of the first 3 matches of the season. Like, Jurgen Klopp will fall for a young player. Feels to me like he made a statement yesterday that this kid's going to play a big role this year. And maybe there is another contract in Mo's Liverpool career. And if it is, it's going to be because you understand that we need to reserve your legs a little bit in some of the minutes. And we know this season's going to have 27 minutes of extra time and you're going to play a lot more. And we got the European competitions. Listen, Mo's going to be pissed off on Thursdays in Azerbaijan when he isn't playing because he loves to play and he loves to score. And let's be honest, Mo really loves to play against weak competition because Mo loves himself a 4 or 5 goal day. So he'd have no problem.
I have a bad feeling. We took Mo out. I think I agree both of you guys in terms of the bad timing of the substitution or bad timing of giving Bandok his minutes because there's going to be a game in a month where we're up 3-0 and Mo is going to play the entire 90, 95, 100 and Bandok is not going to come in. Let's jot that down right here. You guys know it's going to happen. The second guy I want to ask you guys about is Nunez. Because once again, I felt like he came in and he was playing a totally different game than everybody else. Until the man bun came loose, and once the ponytail came out, you saw with what he did there, with the shot he took and stuff, the physical ability and the capabilities he has. But is it just me, Bickler, that anytime I see this kid out there, despite all the potential in the world, I feel like he's playing a totally different game than everybody else on the pitch?
So, I mean, look, the dude's the footballing equivalent of a tropical storm, right? I mean, he comes in and he just creates beautiful chaos in a way, right? But it does completely disrupt the system. It completely disrupts everything around him. I think what you're looking for, I think the pro that is that, like, weird shit happens when he comes in, right? Like, balls bounce places they shouldn't bounce. Like, I mean, like turnovers in weird spots on the pitch, like, things like him intercepting the ball off keepers and just crazy shit in general. But yeah, he's a tactical misfit and we still haven't figured that out. We still don't know where to play him. He still looks like a dude who wants to play on the left wing. It's just him and Jota are both players that play better off central strikers. So I think I don't think that we have an answer for what we're doing with him yet. And like in a team with so many question marks, to spend 65 million on a youngster with that and have him be a question mark is a tough pill to swallow going into this year.
I mean, Brian says, he's still up. I don't know what the heck that was, but he's still raw, and some of the potential will get honed in by now. And that's like the problem. We should cover this, by the way.
I mean, we probably should. We should really. I think we can solve a lot of things, including global warming and UV radiation during this pod. First of all, we can't even figure out. We can't even figure out how to use Nunez, and this person wants us to handle UV radiation. Have they not listened?
Yeah, glass objects containing uranium glow green when exposed. I mean, fun facts. Talking about, I hope you guys didn't read it because I might make that next week's trivia. In terms of what glows in UV light.
The answer is clearly Cocoon songs.
Yeah, if he saw the UV segments, he would know that you guys are nowhere near this kind of trivia yet. So, I mean, back to Nunez real quick from this uranium thing. Brian says like he was raw, but I really expected. I know last summer was like a shorter period of time, but is this kid not going to be able to kind of learn and adjust? Because God knows our system doesn't adjust to players. The player has to adjust to the system, right? I mean, we've seen that with Carvalho and stuff like that. In terms of like the pressing and stuff, how lost he is in terms of the pressing, to me is mind-boggling and kind of like, is a bummer that he's not getting it, it feels like.
Yeah, I will not disagree with you there. The one thing I will say is he's not the first player to ever move to a club and then the club realized tactically they have to make shifts around a player that they just spent a lot of money and invested resources into. Why is it that this club refuses, or this manager refuses, to ever alter his tactics for the shape and or talents in which he has at his disposal? Why is that always like, why is it so worldly to understand? Because I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. No one will like it. If this dude went to Pep Guardiola's side, he'd be a better player by now after 14 months of being under Pep Guardiola. He would.
My thing is, why buy? I don't care if the manager is like, this is my system. If you don't fit in, get the hell out. I can understand that, and I'm totally okay with it. I just don't understand then why would you spend the money to bring a guy that's...
They spent the money because
that it doesn't fit the system.
They saw the talent and the mindset, but they're not actually making any effort to alter their tactics around the skill set. And ultimately, if you're putting a round peg into a square hole, right, and you keep doing it and the shit doesn't work, eventually you take ownership and you either change the format or you figure out a new way to fit that peg into the piece. Like,
but if the kid doesn't understand, like if the kid cannot still understand how we press, that's where I find that's the part. Like,
his expected
there is
his expected thing. He played the least amount of minutes on the pitch yesterday. His expected goal involvement was actually higher. His closest chances, our two closest chances in the second half, were his shot that went just wide and his shot that went right over the top bar. So we all talk about how he doesn't fit in, but when he comes in, he puts the ball on frame, he makes keepers defend, and he makes defenders actually work. And I didn't see that much from Jota. Jota was kind of...
After Robertson, that would be actually my second player.
My point is, and I'm not defending Nunez. What I'm saying is I do believe that Nunez is a player, and I don't know that he'll ever be a great player for Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. But I'm not going to just flat out say he's a bust. Because I think if that kid went to the right club in the Premier League, he'd already... Here's the thing. People don't realize this. Before he signed with Benfica, Brighton, the brilliant Brighton recruitment team, they had a deal for him signed for 19 million out of his small club before he went to Benfica. And it fell through because of like medicals and other things. I think if Brighton had found their way to find this player into their setup, they would have figured out how to utilize his talents, and he'd be scoring goals in the Premier League because he is better. He has better skill sets than a ton of strikers in the Premier League. Oh, yeah, it's up to us now to decide whether or not we want to figure out how to make him work with Liverpool, or we want to just figure out if we can make him salvageable and sell him on to another club. And I genuinely hope we don't. Because Paul made the comment earlier about, at some point, and this may be a comment for another podcast, but there may be a time to talk about like what this club looks like with a new manager rather than keep talking about reconfiguring it to this for another 2.5 seasons. Because if we keep playing like this, we're going to keep finishing 6th to 8th in the table for the next 2-3 years through 2026. This thing needs a reset. The manager, the players. And we knew it was coming. The only thing that's changed are players. Tactics haven't changed. Formations haven't changed. It's really just the players.
I mean, like I said, that's going to open up a whole half-hour conversation we don't have time for now. Like I say, I understand a manager having their system to play and wanting players to fit that system. I'm totally okay with that. You're going to do minor tweaks, and that's why I feel like they probably looked at Nunez and said, he can do this, this, this. I mean, there's so much analytics that go into this. I just don't think we're seeing it now. Yes, he's effective, but I know when he starts, I mean, he might even get a start. I would not be shocked that if we saw a start against Bournemouth actually this week playing against a team like that. I would not be shocked to see that over there. But before we go, let's get predictions for that game. Like I say, throughout the week, we'll have all kinds of shows to do more in-depth previews for like the Bournemouth game. But Bickler, let's start with you. Give me your prediction for Bournemouth next week.
I'll go 2-1 Liverpool.
Okay. Early prediction from you, Gally.
I'm going to go 3-1, and it's purely because I can't trust this team not to give up a bad goal at some point during a match, but I also don't think this team can thump aside because they didn't show anything to me on Sunday that makes me think they can score 4 or 5 against anybody.
See, I feel like I'll see your 3 and raise you 4. I'll do 4-1 because I really felt like if Mo's goal goes in, I think that ends up being a 4-2, 5-2 game or something like that against Chelsea. Once we open the floodgates and get that team to open up a little bit, I think you have the talent up top. And especially if you're playing like Szoboszlai, Gakpo and stuff in midfield, I think you have so many attacking options to make something happen. I thought that was the breaking point for that game because if that goal counts, I think we run away with that game, and that did not happen. But we go again, as we say. So Saturday we'll go with that. I know you boys are recording the Premier League show, which should be on sometime tomorrow, right?
Yeah, it'll probably come out either tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest, depending on when we release it. But it'll definitely go out this week. Quick review of the week, quick review of some of our main topics, talking points, and a little transfer roundup. Thank goodness this window is almost over in another 17 days or whatever it is.
The good news is another 2 months or so, the other one will open. So don't you worry.
Thanks. Can't wait. God.
The January is right around the corner, people.
Stick a freaking dagger in my eye. Why don't you?
So, yeah, on Wednesday as well, we're going to have the new Premier League show with the panel. And we're going to have guys from Fulham, Villa, and Arsenal. So that should be like an interesting one to get those guys' takes on week 1 as well. Kind of looking forward to that. That one will be a live one as well. That one is 8 Central, 9 Eastern on Wednesday night. And obviously we have the Thursday night podcast with the fantasy duo right afterwards on Thursday. So let's hope we're talking all kinds of signings and deals and all that kind of stuff, or more like when Thiago and Basetic is going to be back playing. But either way, you guys have an awesome week. And we'll see you guys here next week on the Monday Kind Podcast.